All right. I am thrilled to introduce our Direction Not Perfection community today to Dr. Sandra Scheinbaum. She's a clinical psychologist for nearly 40 plus years and an expert in positive psychology and mind body medicine, also an author and a regular contributor to Forbes on health and wellness, as well as the host of the Health Coach Talk podcast. Welcome, Dr. Sandra.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're going to have such a fun conversation today. And our community is pretty opened up to the idea of integrative and functional medicine, but I would love for you to take the floor and kind of lead us in on how this came into psychology for you and your thoughts, your views. I want to hear all this connection between positive psychology and integrative functional medicine.
Sure. And so let me share something. If you picture like a drawing, a cartoon, and imagine that it's a kitchen and there's a flood. The floor is soaked and it's getting higher. The water is rising on this floor. And there's a bunch of people in the corner and they have mops. And they're frantically trying to mop the floor so that it doesn't get any worse. And now look off to another part of this picture where there's the kitchen sink and the faucet is on full force. And the sink is overflowing and running onto the floor. The people who are mopping it up are looking down. They're not looking up at the sink. So what they are doing is useless. It's a losing battle. Yeah, it may make some headway. They'll get a little bit of the wetness up, but they're not turning off the source. That picture is where we're at in terms of what conventional medicine is doing for these complex chronic conditions. They're looking downstream. They're not looking up at the root causes, because the root causes often have to do with things like inflammation, oxidative stress, and what is driving those? It's 9 times out of 10, our lifestyle. That means what we're eating. It means are we moving? Are we exercising? It means our sleep, our stress levels, our relationships. Those are the root causes. And so often it is turning off the faucet, turning off what's driving that inflammation. And I don't want to diss acute care medicine because, of course, if you think you're having a heart attack, you want the best. You want to go to the emergency room. You want that acute care facility. But if you have diabetes, if you're struggling to lose weight, then those conventional approaches aren't going to be best serving you. So what does functional medicine do? Well, instead of mopping up the floor, just treating the symptoms, it looks under the hood. It addresses those root causes. And what attracted me, I was a health psychologist for many, many years, is that the whole field of psychology is very much like this example where, someone is describing symptoms of anxiety. Okay, well, if you're seeing a psychiatrist or your primary care doctor, you'll get a medication. If you're seeing a psychologist, they're going to be sitting with you and talking. But what about actually looking at how you might be working yourself up into a state of anxiety, how that started, and how you can have simple techniques for changing that. And positive psychology, that is all about what's right with you and not what's wrong with you. So picture those as the root causes that have to do with thriving. And so when we are utilizing our strengths, we are thriving, we can be productive, we are in a state of well-being. And so the two systems of functional medicine, positive psychology, they're both evidence-based. It's not just getting these ideas out of nowhere. It's research-based. And they're highly personalized. They're not one size fits all. Well, just because this food is right for one person doesn't mean it's right for you. Similar with exercise plans. So they're both highly personalized and they're based on the idea that the whole body is like this matrix and one system is connected with all the others and they're talking to one another. So if you are depressed, well, maybe you have gut issues, and that's what is driving your mood issues.
Right. That there's connections that individuals aren't willing to believe can even be connected,
That's
right?
right.
That how do you start to bring your clients on board that things are connected? Is it through stories? Like I loved your visual that you just started off with. I think everybody can go, that's so interesting. How do you pull your people along?
So we train health coaches to use a client-centered, personalized approach. So what is right for one person might not be right for somebody else. So one person might need data. And when I worked as a psychologist, I specialized in biofeedback. And that is where you are getting feedback in real time about what's going on physiologically. So might have them wear breathing belts. They can see where their breathing is coming from, or doing a temperature training where you see the temperature of your fingers. So that gives you data. And you could see, oh, when I have that thought, or when I started to get upset, oh, look what happened on the screen. It went haywire. And today we have modern tools like a continuous glucose model you wear on the back of your arm or on your thigh, and you could see in real time what's going on with your blood glucose readings. And so, based on that data, for some people, that's going to be really compelling to change their behavior. For other people, that might be overload. It might upset them more. Why is it reacting? I thought I was eating well and now it's sky high and I don't understand this. And so it could be more upsetting. And so similarly for those people, they would want something that would be a different approach. Maybe they say they learn best with images and picturing themselves, how they would like to be, imagining their future self. And so what a coach does is ask these questions about, what do you want your health for? What matters most to you? Where would you most like to be down the road in 5 years and 10 years and so forth? And now what steps can you take today that will get you to where you want to be?
Thank you for mentioning this all goes back to individualized again. It is such an individual journey, and it starts with how we learn all the way up through how we take action and how we even acknowledge our successes. And it kind of goes with this question, like you have a very strong belief system that coaches are important, not just utilize our professionals, but this term coaching, kind of go through, and I think individualized with this, but why do you have such a belief system in coaches?
Sure. Well, my belief, and I'm going to go out on a limb, that they are the new primary care. Why am I saying that? I'm not saying that they're going to replace medical doctors. We need those hardworking medical professionals. There's a growing shortage. Good luck in some parts of the country trying to find a new primary care doctor. And if you have a physician, but maybe it's not one person like in the old days, like when I grew up in the 50s, you had your doctor and he knew you and he knew your family and the whole neighborhood. And it was a sense that you could trust this person, and they had bedside manner. They connected with you, eye contact. Now, even if you have a doctor, there's no bedside manner anymore. They talk about this. They're not even teaching it in medical school because there's so much pressure on the healthcare practitioner. They're given like 7 minutes to be with somebody. They can only talk about one issue at a time. They're rushed. They're harried. EMR work is just out of control. And there's a growing shortage. Young doctors out of medical school aren't choosing primary care. And so some people are in these conglomerate. There's a practice with 100 doctors and they might see a different one every time, or they just go to urgent care to get those healthcare needs. And again, that's fine if you think you broke your foot. That's the place to be, but it's not going to give you the care you need if you have Parkinson's or early onset Alzheimer's or type 2 diabetes, these complex chronic conditions. So what does the coach do? And why am I saying they're the new primary care? Because primary care needs to be lifestyle change. That is what's driving these conditions. And so if you had a coach, and the coach, let's imagine that in your next doctor's visit, or you're seeing a new primary care doctor, your first encounter is with this, like a concierge. they're going to take care of you. In other words, they're going to answer all your questions. Often the modern medical system is so difficult to navigate. You're put on hold. You can't make an appointment, especially for older people. It can be overwhelming because it's not the model that they were used to. And it's very confusing. It's stressful. So coaches can guide you. They can be your advocate to make sure your needs are met when you do see the doctor. They can also focus on these lifestyle change issues. And 9 times out of 10, if you start there, then the doctor is like the consultant. And yes, they're going to run your labs. They're going to track changes, and you would have them for those kinds of emergencies or those conditions where they can best do what they were trained to do in medical school in terms of that acute care. But the coach is the one who's going to be consistently with you and taking the time. So instead of that 7-8 minute visit, they could see you for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You can text in between. It can be virtual because they're not bound by state lines for licensing. And you feel like you have a guide and an ally, somebody who's going to hold you accountable, and someone who you trust. They listen to you and you feel heard. And so you can talk to them about things and you're not going to be judged or you're not going to be rushed, where often people will say, oh, I left my doctor's appointment. And, oh, I forgot to ask that. Or I was too embarrassed to talk about this issue because they're seen as this authority figure. And again, often unwittingly, this idea that they just don't have enough time for all of the issues that you may want to discuss in that visit.
Right. It's true. I think this is why all these physicians are jumping ship over to integrative and functional medicine, because private pay allows them to address the whole person, the whole body. And that time, like you said, it doesn't exist in the other. And as you were saying, can you imagine having somebody sitting there in an appointment with you or like helping you navigate the phone calls? I can see my clients, my listeners' shoulders going down and like, that would be amazing. It's funny. I've even written sometimes for clients a quick little paragraph blurb to walk into their doctor's office so they have the right verbiage. They can feel confident asking their questions, because I feel like if we feel dumb asking a question, we're not gonna keep pressing it, right? We're gonna ask it, and if our doctor gives us a weird look or that's silly, we don't do that, we'll move on. But like if you feel confident and you know what you're going in for and the right way to ask it, we normally get to different answers. So I love your idea of the coach being that liaison, that middle person. Yes. So you see this already starting to happen?
Yes. So we see this in the functional integrative medicine world because they're sold on the idea of health coaching. And so, and often a coach is the one that makes it easier for the practitioner. So rather than giving the same talk about exercise, they can turn it over to the coach. And primarily because doctors were not trained in behavior change. They're trained as the expert. So they're going to say, I'd like you to lose weight, or I'd like you to start exercising. Or as one person told me, they saw both their cardiologists and their internists. These were not integrative or functional, but they were told, you need to be a vegan. She had no idea. And of course, that caused her to be even more metabolically unhealthy, for example. And so this is something that a coach can really sort that out, making sure you understand what was meant by this. Often labs can be very confusing. And although coaches don't interpret labs because they don't hold that medical license, they can educate and they can help people understand what is being measured on these tests. And more, I think the conventional medical world is realizing this. We're seeing, for example, most of the major insurers have health coaches, and Medicare realizes it because for 2024, it's an approved telehealth service that doesn't guarantee reimbursement with Medicare. It's very challenging and complicated often, but it's on that pathway to getting reimbursement. They recognize the value of health and wellness coaching.
That's amazing. I'm excited to see where this goes for sure. So, and the more I keep talking to you, you really don't do just clinical experience anymore. Like you are now managing. Go into where this journey's led you.
Yeah, so I was a clinical psychologist for many, many years. Before
Mhm.
that, I was a teacher in special education. I spent some time then training teachers to be those special education teachers and supervise them. And so, having done that until I was 65, that was about 9 years ago. And people were coming to me who were already health coaches, and they were saying, I really would love more training. I don't feel quite confident to be a coach. And they were very interested in this functional medicine approach, which is
Yeah.
where you utilize the principles of functional medicine as a health coach, which might include helping people to tell their story, looking at when was the first time, when did you last feel well? And then going back, what were the events? What happened? And they might say, oh, I had mold in my house, or I had root canals, or I had a divorce. And you start tracing to see what was the trigger. But what were also what went before? What were some of the factors that had led up to this? As well, like, for example, a history of antibiotics. And what are some of the mediators, the things that just kept all of these conditions going? It might be your diet. It might be that, oh, you always had a high level of stress. And so the coach helps people to retell their story with their strengths, what's right with them. And I
Mm.
realized that there was this need to have this training program in these modalities. So partnered with the Institute for Functional Medicine, they train the doctors. And to that point, this was around 2014, they had been approached a lot of times about starting a health coach training, and they felt the right person didn't come along. So we were able to fill that gap. And together with the senior faculty from IFM, we built the curriculum. And so I knew nothing about running a business. The only business I ever ran was my private practice. And I did
Yeah.
quite well as a psychologist in private practice. I was getting lots of referrals from lots of doctors. But the actual process of hiring people and running a business was something I was unfamiliar with. So I quickly learned and had the right team in place so that we were able to grow. We were remote from the get-go, and that means people can study with us from all over the world. And it's been remarkable. And now we've trained close to 5,000 coaches. We need a
Wow.
whole lot more. We're now getting grants for scholarships, so we want to expand to be able to reach more communities in need.
Oh my goodness, that is so amazing. And I know this is a rude question to ask age, but I think it's important because a lot of this happened recently, right? Like it's been a shift of career. And how old are you?
Yes, so I was 65 when I started. Now I
Okay.
am 74. Uh,
See, and one of your messages is it's never too late. And do you feel
yes.
like you're thriving in this new season of life?
Oh, totally. Like I
Yeah.
could never have imagined. And I actually thank all my failures because there was a time, it was in the 90s, I was working with some psychiatrists and we were partners in running this big group psychiatric psychological practice. And we had
Mhm.
social workers and psychologists, and the overhead was tremendous. And there were just, for many reasons, it just didn't thrive. It was in the day
Yeah.
of the height of managed care. And we needed to get contracts with managed care payers. So, bottom line, the practice dissolved. And I remember thinking at the time, my career's over. What am I going to do? And
Mhm.
so now I thank that failure because if that didn't happen,
Yeah.
then that's where I would still be
Yeah.
in this local community, as opposed to the reach that I have now and the strong mission and purpose and all the joy that I have found seeing these coaches go out and literally transform lives for the better.
Mhm.
And so, yes, it is never too late. And we have students come to us in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And we have one gentleman who is in his 90s. He was a student, and his granddaughter is going through. We have husband and wives who are in retirement in their 80s. And and it's not about building a career at this
Yeah.
point. We have a lot of teachers who have pensions, for example, don't want to retire totally. And this is what gives them meaning in their life, to give back, to help others. They're interested in health. And in the process of becoming a coach and coaching someone else, you get healthy, you're transformed. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Oh, I 100% agree. I say this all the time. I feel so fortunate to be in this line of work because the more we talk about, all the positive changes and the health habits, then you're automatically thinking about it throughout your own days. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny, some clients who really lost some significant amount of weight find themselves in whether it's coaching or teaching fitness classes or immersing themselves in this land of health and
Yes.
fitness in a really positive way. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Inspiring others. Absolutely. It's
Yes.
so rewarding. Someone, they were wanting to enroll and they said they're preparing for their non-retirement retirement.
Oh,
We've had
that's so
many
perfect.
people like this. She was a nurse for many, many years. And she was now getting into her 60s and felt like, hey, she wants to retire from this
Mhm.
9 to 5 job she'd been at for many, many years. And this is a way that she could still be of service, but on her own, because people do work for doctors as coaches, but they can also work on their own. And she just said, I just want to have a few clients, see them remotely, and then be able to enjoy my life at this point and be my
Yes.
life as a grandma to travel. It's that combination of having this while you're in retirement.
Yes, I've had chills so many times while you're talking. Thank you for this inspiration and truly the it's never too late topic because you're speaking to my community. And one of the things that sometimes we need to talk about is refinding some of that joy or purpose because as moms going through those seasons of life, we
Mhm.
can lose ourselves. And this is just another great option that won't take up all of your time, but you can, like you said, refine purpose. And it doesn't have to look done at a certain age. And thank you for role modeling that because I want to be you. I want to be still doing this when I'm way past 70s, So thank you. So good. So I want to get back to root causes for a moment
Sure.
because I think this is really important for our listeners to hear. We do talk root causes, but again, this is functional medicine at its best. It's getting back to why we're experiencing the symptoms that we're experiencing. I want to hear from you on why do we have such barriers or roadblocks on accepting that we need to change that root cause. Like for some people, they come in and they're just ready to change, they're ready to hear it. And for other individuals, it still feels almost woo woo to them. It feels like we already have medicine that's taking care of this. This isn't really going to make that big of a difference. Do you see that?
Yeah, I do. So, first of all, what I see, let's take like weight resistant weight loss. And
Hmm.
that is people try the same thing over and over again that didn't work in the
Yes.
past. And so many people, particularly my generation, are stuck just like you're stuck with the way you did your makeup or your style of dress. They're still stuck with that thinking calories in, calories out, or I'm going to go on a diet to lose weight. And as opposed to looking at focusing on getting metabolically healthy as opposed to throwing out the scale, unless it's a scale where you can measure skeletal muscle, and many of the new ones do.
Yeah.
But that old way of thinking, where it's a diet plan and you're weighing yourself on a scale and you are thinking in terms of calories, that has been shown time and time again not to work. And so, looking at what are my needs at this point in my life, and I made such big mistakes. I mean, I did everything like that. And so I was always petite, but I was also hefty when I was when I was teaching. And those were the days where the parents brought snacks in, cookies, and I remember these bags of Oreos in the closet in the classroom. And oh yeah, I was like addicted. And the bags of M&Ms, and while I was writing papers, for example, even started in college. So it was all about it. It was a sugar addiction, and it was okay. Well, I can just go on a diet, and I can lose 5 pounds and 10 pounds, and of course gain it right back again, not realizing how ineffective this was. And then went through every trend that in retrospect, now we have the science to see that didn't really work, particularly for women. So I was vegetarian, and then I was a vegan, and then I was a raw vegan. I was so unhealthy. during that time and didn't really realize that I would just eat more kale, have a bigger shake, not realizing that I was lacking nutrients. And then I started to add in animal protein, much more protein, and red meat. And so that's what works. And there are a lot of experts in the field, J.J. Virgin, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and muscle-centric medicine. Because what I also was not doing was building muscle, because I grew up in the era, it was like women, I was horrible. I was not an athlete. I was the last person to be picked in gym class for a team. And so it just was not a way of life for me. To play sports, for example, and got into aerobics at the Jane Fonda era. But I never did weight training in a consistent way to the point where it was heavy resistance. And we were encouraged that you didn't need that or you didn't want to get bulky. And now that is my life, basically. I'm as adamant about doing strength training as brushing my teeth and incorporating it as exercise snacks during the day in any way I can, and focusing on lots and lots of good quality protein because that's what we need for muscle wasting. So that has been really effective for me to focus on that and then in terms of I actually need to gain some weight, so that's not my issue. But they're looking at what happens when people focus on protein first and having that. It's not going to be like pounding out the cardio, but really more the resistance. So it's not about losing the fat or losing the weight. It's about building muscle. And then your body self-corrects. And there's a lot of good science coming out now about this. And so if you focus on muscle, that will be a way. And, and then there is a role. There are some people who have very stubborn weight loss, and the new GLP-1 agonists, new weight loss drugs, they've been vilified, but there's also a positive side. If you are working with the right practitioner and if you are focused on lifestyle change with a coach at the same time, that's what we are advocating at FMCA. And that is like, it's not all bad or all good. It's not one or the other. It is if you get the right support and you are building muscle at the same time. So, because that's the other thing that happens. I was trying to explain to a friend my age, and she just said, I'm going on a diet. I need to lose these 10 pounds. Well, this is really focusing on muscle building because you're going to lose muscle and you can't afford that at our age to lose more muscle.
Right. Right. What great advice for your friend. And I love that you said that's never good or bad. I've worked in surgical weight loss to just weight management in a health club. And there's, for the individual person, sometimes we need jump starts in certain ways. And then how do we get to that next level of sustainability? And I think that's the word that comes with what you're talking about is protein intake is sustainable. Resistance training is sustainable. The calories in, calories out is not sustainable. That's where diets really fail. So I appreciate you going there with all of this because it is a mindset change. And if any of our listeners missed that, that's summarizing what you were saying. Like the reason why it's hard to have people change is because there's a lot that's ingrained that we're unraveling in order to put the new information in and build the belief system. So we've got our work cut out for us, right? It's definitely, and it's
doable.
2 steps. It is doable. 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes, but yes, there's a new route to all of this. And I think people are slowly getting on board with that. But thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. So I always like to ask this. It's kind of like, if you heard nothing else out of me today, what do you kind of hope and pray that our listeners did hear from you today?
Yeah, I hope that they have hope, that it is never too late to make a change. And the change can be really small. So maybe it's starting with body weight resistance exercise. Can I do 1 push-up? Okay, great. If I can do 1 push-up, I'll aim for 2. And start small as breaks during the day. Many people are intimidated. They might go to a gym, they see the weight room with all the guys bulking up, and they think, I don't know how to use this. I'll get injured. There's a big fear of that. And so find someone who, again, your guide. And in this case, it could be a personal trainer and also health coaches. They're not personal trainers. They can support you in following through. and doing what you said you wanted to do and getting over that inertia and building it into as a habit. And anything is possible if you have that vision, you have the sense, this is where I want to be. And it might be hard, but these are the small, gradual steps, approximations to reaching that big goal.
Okay, and I have a question for you because I'm 100% agreeing with you, but I have a lot of individuals who struggle with the thought of I have to pay for accountability. Like I know what to do and I can't believe I have to pay to have somebody hold my feet to the fire. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I would ask them about all of the things that they do pay for. That because they're not going to, or they don't want to do it themselves. Like for me, it's having an accountant. There's no way I can't stand doing that financial analysis and figuring out taxes. It's just not my language. It could be Chinese when the accountant talks to me about some of these things, and so I rely on that expert. But a coach can be the expert, but they are also, it's this combination of having a therapist, a guide, an advocate, somebody who is in your corner. And that is invaluable. And also, we tend to think of being in therapy. And I know people who've been in therapy for 20 years, 30 years. That's not coaching. It can be 5 sessions with a coach to get you on your way. And maybe you go back in a year or so for another session if you want to have support on perhaps another issue. So it can be surprisingly short. And also in terms of working with a trainer and paying for a trainer, that is money well spent because of injury. If you could get injured if you don't know what you're doing with weights, but someone who's going to make sure you have the right form. I see a lot of people, my gym, women who they walk around with their own clipboards because they worked with a trainer. They've given them a set of exercises. They know how to do it. Now they're on their own. So again, it's like training wheels that you have that support and now you're off on your own and you can do it on your own.
Yeah, that was a wonderful answer. Yes. And if nothing else, if for no other reason than just having it on the calendar makes you show up, right?
Yes.
And sometimes that's worth its weight in gold. So
that is true.
So good. What am I not asking you that I should be?
So I think that we can talk a little bit more about how do you get there. You get there through your character strength. So let's say you are struggling, you feel like you're at an impasse, keep gaining the same few pounds, or every night you find yourself in your cupboard reaching for a snack. You rely on your character strengths. This comes from positive psychology. And there are things like having gratitude, having hope, but there are also things related to like the strength of self-regulation. And so maybe you are using self-regulation. Maybe you can sit down and do a work assignment and get it done. And you're really great with self-regulating that and not deciding to watch Netflix until that work is done. But then it falls apart when it goes to eating, for example. You can channel that. And there are lots of ways that you can focus on incorporating, yes, I do have the control. I can do this instead of I can't. And maybe you use another character strength, which is love. How can I show myself so much love right now? Or maybe it is creativity. That's another character strength. Creativity, well, what can I think of to do at this time that would satisfy that craving? Or perhaps I'll make myself some tea and the ritual of doing that. Or maybe I will call somebody, or maybe I will breathe some fresh air and go out for a walk. Or perhaps you are going to utilize that strength of curiosity. I'm curious. I wonder how it would feel if I didn't have that snack. What's it going to be like tomorrow? Will I have more energy? Or perhaps you're wearing an Oura ring to track your sleep. I'm curious, if I don't eat this late night snack, what is that going to do to my sleep tonight? That the Oura ring will show, oh, I had better deep sleep or more REM sleep, less restless sleep. So those are things that you can incorporate. And how do you get there? Again, it's these character strengths. I'm curious about how I will feel. I am going to focus on taking the lead. Leadership is another character strength. I'm grateful for, and then you focus on something else in your life and choosing to go there. So incorporating those is really important.
I'm guessing you help walk your clients through finding their character strengths. That's not
Yes.
something that a lot of people just naturally can go, I know I'm strong. I mean, some of us know we're strong somewhere, but you kind of can dig on that.
Yes. So we have some signature strengths that when we're using them, we're at our best. This comes from the research at the VIA Institute, VIA. And so they have a free survey, and that's how you find out. We have all of these strengths. They're innate. We're born with them. But some are more like our signature strength. So we look at our top ones and how we can use them more, but how we can incorporate all of them.
And how much more fun does that sound to lean into our strengths than battle our weaknesses, right?
Yes, exactly.
Ah, so let our listeners know if they're going, oh, yes, please. I feel like you're exactly what I need. Where do people find you? What are you offering? Walk us through it all.
Sure, they can go to functionalmedicinecoaching.org, and there are free resources there. We have a free book. There's a free course on functional medicine and positive psychology that is coming. And then we also have an Instagram, Functional Med Coach, and my personal Instagram is Dr. Sandy, Sandi. You can connect with me there.
Wonderful. And if somebody were looking you up, is this just for coaches wanting to be coaches, or is this also individuals who want to be coached?
Yes, you want to be coach. Absolutely. So we have a Find a Coach on our
Mhm.
website. You can get a health coach who can help you support you with your goals.
Wonderful. Oh, I hope everybody heard this because I think one of the hardest things is sometimes just knowing who to call or like reaching out to the right person is a huge barrier for a lot of people. So just knowing there's kind of a one-stop shop of I go to this and somebody can help find me that coach that's going to link up with my needs is amazing. And I think we should all take that quiz on finding our inner strengths and what we should be leaning into. So, thank you for exposing everything today. I really appreciate all of your wisdom, your expertise. Do you miss being in the expert chair? Do you miss being a psychologist?
Well, I returned to my roots as a teacher. And so now I
Oh,
teach these principles. And that's my
yes.
first love to be able to spread that knowledge. And so that people who I teach can go on and they can be the teachers.
Yes. Oh, so cool. Again, generation changing, and thank you for making such a difference in guiding this new way of thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
You too.